Hi, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of Doodle Therapy. It's great to be back and to see some familiar and new faces in the chat. My name is Alice Lee. I am your host, as well as an artist and a muralist based in the SF Bay Area, formerly in Taipei. If you are joining us today, please feel free to introduce yourself, say hi, join the chat, maybe say your name, where you're from, and we usually have a random question of the day. Maybe we'll come up with it in a couple minutes. Yesterday's random question of the day was, what is a middle school band or artist that you loved? So, maybe we'll come up with a memories related question to kick things off. So if you're new to Doodle Therapy, this is a bi-weekly drawing show here on Adobe Live, where our goal is to come together, to doodle together, relax, chill, and learn about something new when it comes to drawing from a guest artist. Every week that we're on, we feature a special guest and we have a different doodle prompt that is related to that guest's area of expertise or interests. So in the past, we've done comics, children's book illustrations, and today, please join me in welcoming our special guest, graphic novelist Laura Gao. Welcome, Laura.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you, and thanks for joining us for day 2. So Laura is a graphic novelist whose debut graphic novel memoir called Messy Roots is coming out next year, and she just opened it up for pre-orders this week, so it's very exciting. So since it's a autobiographical memoir, we thought it'd be fun to have our doodle prompt this week to be drawing memories from our past that you want to celebrate or explore in some way, and in a sequential comics format. So before we jump into intros, if you would like to draw along, which anyone is totally invited to, regardless of your skill level, you can draw in your own format, or you can use the template that we've prepared for you, which you can find in the description below. So if you want to use that template, it can be probably a good time to get it open and downloaded on your computer. So while we work on that, I'm gonna bring up some of Laura's awesome work here on the screen. Some of Laura's past comic work, and excerpts from her upcoming novel. So Laura, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself, what you're all about, your book, where you're joining us from, and we'll have to come up with a random question of the day for everyone.
Okay, yeah. Hi everyone, my name is Laura. I am a comic artist who I was born in Wuhan, China. I grew up around a small town in Texas, and I'm normally based in San Francisco, but I'm currently calling it from Taipei, which I was with Alice just a month ago. And my upcoming graphic novel or graphic memoir, Messy Roots, is about my life growing up as a queer Chinese American immigrant in small town Texas, where I was one of the few people, queer people of color there. And it's talking about my coming of identity, both with being Asian American and being queer, which has a lot of intersectionality. So it goes through my journey to finding and accepting myself, as well as interlaying different stuff from my hometown, Wuhan, interlaying a lot of anti-Asian racism happening in the pandemic as well, regarding to my hometown and Asian folks. And then a little bit magical realism with some Asian folk tales that I grew up with.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And I thought of a random question of the day, since you mentioned that the title of your book is called Messy Roots. My question for you and for everyone reading this, if you would like to share in the chat, is if you were to, what is the name of the chapter of life that you're in right now? If you were to describe the chapter you're in, what would it be called?
Wow.
Yeah. I also want to say hi to everyone joining us live. Hi to our awesome moderator, Sam Peterson, who is a super talented artist himself and just posted a bunch of really helpful links to some of Laura's work, as well as the pre-order for the book. And hi to Axel, who's here yesterday. Adele, our friend from Penn, where we both went to school. John, Katie, who's joining us from Oregon, and Maggie. Welcome, everyone. I can share my chapter title. It's pretty simple. I tend to think of chapters as pretty short as opposed to like long sections. So the chapter of life that I'm in right now, I would call it unfurling, like unfolding, because now that things are starting to open up more in the US, I feel like my life is just unfurling and like blooming again. In ways that, obviously it couldn't last year. So that's kind of the theme. Analu O says, theirs would be, what's in a name? Ooh, I'm curious as to your thoughts and reasoning behind calling your life chapter currently that.
I would say mine. I love puns. I have a lot of puns in my chapter titles for Messy Roots, but I'd probably say right now, like at this very moment, because Taiwan is in lockdown, it would be like young, mild, and free.
Young, mild, and free. Love it.
You can't go wild right now in Taiwan. But I would say like young, right now, my chapter is, I just quit my full-time job last year to become like a full-time artist. And so with that, I've had the liberty to like travel wherever I want, be nomadic, like have my own schedule and like do what I love. So I think of like Young, Wild and Free, like that song that, was like what in middle school or something by Snoop Dogg. Except now it's just mild because I can't go wild yet.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. Actually, that's how I feel normally. I'm just a mild person. Like living an interesting life, but I tend to go to bed like early and get sleepy, kind of being a grandma. Maggie, who I just got tea with, says hers would be Unraveled Threads. Ooh, I'm curious as to why you would call it that and what the story is behind that title. So I think this is a great segue to shift into the drawing portion of our stream. So if you joined us yesterday, you probably saw us starting to draw out and explore different memories that we want to, put down to paper. So the idea is to try to think of 3 to 4 different memories in some kind of sequence, and just to draw them out. And if you'd like, you can follow this simple template that we put together that you can download in the description. So, this is sort of based on some of Laura's past graphic novels work, where, you can see here, she does a lot of cool compositions with the different sequences, having different layers as well. And I can also pull some up here as well to be more high res. So we kind of are taking some notes from Laura's graphic novel themes as well as like compositions, and can fill out this template with the memories that you want to fill in. And thanks to everyone who doodled along. If you end up drawing your own memories as well, whether it's from the past or, just last week memories that you want to remember, or even some kind of like semi-fictionalized version of your past history, feel free to share it online, and you can tag me at by Alice Lee. I love to see everyone's doodles, and as well as with Laura at Hey Laura Gao. So yeah, we're going to spend the first 10 or so minutes, continuing to sketch and draw. And it looks like Laura's also starting to move into color a little bit. Is that kind of where your head is at?
Yeah. I think I'll probably like refine some of these pictures, like drawings from yesterday, and go into color.
Yeah. How would you describe like what you're working on, just to kind of recap it for people who might not have been here yesterday? Like, what are you drawing and where are you in the process? Like, what's next for you? What are you thinking about at this stage?
Yeah, so like we're drawing our memories, and I decided to draw some of my favorite memories of my time here in Taiwan. Particularly like my birthday weekend was very memorable. So for me, my birthday weekend, I like the very first picture here is me in a shark suit because I do this like onesie fundraiser every year where I like dress up in a onesie, do a bunch of like crazy stuff, and then raise money. So this is me and like a friend who helps me videotape a lot of like TikToks and stuff in my onesie shark suit. And then this here is for your birthday at Howdy Lao, which is a hot pot place. They do this like noodle dance where they wave this noodle in front of you and like do a dance. So
That's so funny. Do you eat the noodle after?
You do, yeah. They like dance it all around, and it's like super skilled. And they cut the noodles and put in the hot pot after.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
What a great concept. They do a noodle dance around you, and then
yeah. And then last one is just me biking along the river, which is like one of my favorite things to do here of all time. And so I started off with like a rough sketch and pencil, which I still kind of have here. I don't know if you can see like the small outlines of that pencil.
Yeah.
And then I went to inking, so like having like more concrete and bolder lines. And then after that, then I'll go into coloring. And that's like typically kind of the process I follow for any comic.
Yeah. So are you basically at the coloring stage now, or are you continuing to do inking?
Yeah, for the most part, I'll probably draw a couple of more of these like transpose like 4 images and like transform drawings on top of like the mahjong, the different. Maybe I'll draw a couple of like Asian like Taiwanese snacks that I like to like put on the page.
Oh, cool. Love it. Awesome. Yeah, I remember some of these memories since I got to be there for some of them. Like Laura and I actually have done a lot of dance TikToks together. So those are on the internet. Lots of dance TikToks and with Laura in the shark costume. And we also went biking along the river at night, and it was really wonderful. Let's see. Axel says that he drew along, but is still working on it before they share on Discord. So thanks, Axel. And definitely, feel free to post it, even if it's like a simple sketch format or if it's like a full, like painted, colored format. Like it's fun to see. And one of my goals with Doodle Therapy is just to encourage people to, just draw freely and like unconsciously. Not unselfconsciously, not unconsciously. And getting some cool responses to our random question of the day. So Adele Wu, who is also a really talented artist, you should check out her Instagram, says the title of their chapter would be Forced Growth because she just graduated and is feeling very scared of starting work and taxes. Yes, it's definitely a period of transition. It's like, here's adulthood, but I feel confident that you'll be able to figure it out. Analu, who says that their chapter title for their life phase right now would be What's in a Name, says that they're in a big transition, moving countries, moving in with their partner. It's the same perspective of opening up, but now it feels like multiplayer level. I can definitely feel that. It's like, it's like feeling like you're going from playing like one-dimensional Sudoku to like multi-dimensional Sudoku sometimes when you're like adulting. Yeah. So cool. Oh, and Maggie says that she recognizes your shark costume from the TikToks.
Nice.
On my end, I'm continuing to draw memories from my childhood with my grandma. I used to spend all of my summers growing up, back in my hometown of Hangzhou, China, which is a really beautiful place. So, I've got this memory of my cousin and I every week would get like a liter of Sprite each. That was our allotment, which is kind of crazy now, I think, looking back, because it's pretty unhealthy, I think. But, it's what our parents just gave to like get us to stop being so crazy. I obviously remember the delicious foods that my grandma would make, dumplings, fish, and going shopping with my grandma in veggie markets at like 5 a.m. when it was all like super fresh, really chaotic on the streets, and everyone knew each other. And so I'm gonna finish inking these in, and then I'll probably add some like light color towards the end of the stream.
Awesome.
Yeah. And if anyone has questions about our process as we're drawing these, like definitely feel free to ask in the chat. And just to kind of preempt some questions that usually come, I'm using Photoshop on desktop, so Photoshop with my computer, and Laura is using Photoshop on iPad, which she also has mentioned, at least to me before, that this is like the app that you use with your colorist for your graphic novel when you guys like hand off.
So I a lot of times I'll ink originally in Procreate, but she uses like Clip Studio sometimes, so then we'll use Photoshop as like the middle ground. So I'll like switch over Photoshop, and then she will too, and then we'll both be able to kind of like edit our like pieces on Photoshop that way.
Cool. And Axel asks color development. So I can explain it, although I also feel like, Laura, you probably are way more versed in this than I am. But basically, from what I understand, like, and feel free to, jump in whenever, you do a lot of the line work and the story, and then your colorist works with you to determine like the color story, and then they color in your drawings. Is that correct?
We work pretty well in tangent, where I developed the story and did a lot of the initial like drawings, and then we worked on a color scheme together, and we actually ended up deciding on having, because the book's kind of split into 3 different locations: Wuhan, Texas, and San Francisco, and so we came up with a different color scheme for each of those locations. And then in terms of like the handoff of work, she like, for her, like coloring also goes hand in hand with the lines, where like sometimes she may have to change the color of the lines as well, from like black to a different color to better map the color scheme. And then she'll also like change some of my lines after I've given her the original sketch.
I see. Yeah, like if I go to your samples that you sent over, it seems like a lot of the China, like the ones that are based in China, have this like warm yellow and like warm green tint to it. And then from what I recall from the SF illustrations that you have in there, they're more of like a deep blue, like they're less warm. Yeah, they're definitely a lot more cooler. We went for SF, it was like a lot of blues to kind of highlight the water there, because water is like a motif in the story in the SF section. Wuhan was more, it was like more greens and some yellows, because we wanted to highlight both the countryside and this like more nostalgic feel, and we thought green and yellow were great for that. And then Texas was actually a bit more of a like kind of like a blander reds, yellows, and browns, because we wanted to show my emotional state then. There's definitely a lot of like turmoil and like feeling like this wasn't home to me. Right. That makes a lot of sense. So like this chapter, for example, is from your Texas chapter. So you see you can totally see that more like dull kind of palette. Right, it says pen. We wanted the reader to like open up any page and kind of know my emotional state and like my like which location I was just from the color scheme. And like SF definitely is like a lot more vibrant, like blues, like full of possibility. And do you have an example of your SF comics on hand by chance? No worries if I'm putting you on the spot a little. So for SF, so I guess like this technically
isn't SF, but this is our pen, and then pen and SF we kind of like grouped together. Even though they are technically two different locations, we grouped it together as like one main life stage. And that life stage is like, because like not only did I come out to myself at pen and actually start to like make a lot of Asian friends at pen and like understand my Asian identity, we put those together as like this much more vibrant color scheme. So you can see like the blues, the yellows, and like the just like how much more vibrant this is. So
Yeah,
this is like
that is
part
so
of
cool.
my coming out. This one's part of my coming out chapter here, where I went to like the Pen Queer and Asian mixer, and like that club was like instrumental in like my finding of identity.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, especially I've got your your Wuhan, China chapter up on my screen, and it's cool to kind of see the comparison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one's like another part of SF where it's like me talking to one of my best friends, and we like have a discussion about our identity, because we had just gone to a Chinese Students Association meetup where like I felt alienated in a different way, almost as if I wasn't Asian enough, because growing up I did feel very whitewashed. And like we were discussing that, and like my friend, my best friend Yijin, she grew up in China, but she's Korean herself, so she has like even a much different perspective as like an international Asian person and not like Asian American too. So yeah, like the colors show a lot of the moods that we were feeling at the time.
Yeah, it's so cool to get to, hear your thoughts on these and like examine this as a color story. And just like Anna Davis Court in the chat says, welcome Anna. It's amazing how much color can tell a story. So I'm curious, like, for example, in the panels that you have where on the left side of your screen where, your character is standing under a street light, like when you drew that, did you envision that lighting and then communicate it to your colorist, or did you guys like plan out these sequences and then she was like, oh, I could add a little bit of this lighting, for example?
Yeah, we planned it out together, where when I originally drew this scene, I did intend it to be like a moody nighttime walk, coming back from that event. And then I did put a lot of like in an earlier page, I used the street lamp and like the moon as a motif, because the street lamp will kind of like morph into the moon, and then like the white rabbit candy here also kind of morphs with the moon together. So that I envisioned going in together. And then I communicated this with her, where we like every week we called for like many like for like 3-hour sessions, and we would go through like the 20 pages we were doing for that week together, and we would discuss each of them in length of like, okay, here's the mood we're going for. Here's like why I put like the street lamps here. And then like we just connected so well to where like she knew immediately to like do this very dramatic lighting. And like she's so talented. Her name's Wei Wei Shu. Definitely like check out her work. But she like once she heard kind of like the vision I had for it, she knew exactly how to do all the color and like the color value balance.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing this with us. It's cool to see your process. Merv Bingle in the chat says, nice storyboard. And I totally agree. Like if you guys have questions about storyboarding or like this color story, feel free to, ask and I will relay it to Laura. Oh, cool. Is that your graduation?
This is, yeah. Yeah, I can see like all the really bright colors and stuff here.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool to compare like this earlier chapter, where this is from your earlier life on my side up here to your like later in your story, where there's definitely like colors that are consistent, like this yellow. So you feel like it's part of the same book or like story, but then like the colors in these chapters that you're referencing are so much more vibrant, and it really is a very interesting contrast, especially when you look at it side by side like this.
Yeah, that's a really great point. We did try to keep two things constant, and like, yeah, yellow was a huge thing. Not only because like, you know, yellow in terms of identity is kind of like a symbolism there, but also we kept the red. Like we decided to always keep Laura, like keep myself in a red shirt, to kind of like very denote that
Oh,
main character. And then like red's a very special color in Chinese culture too.
yeah, that's so interesting. Very clever. Thanks for explaining that.
Mhm.
What is it that you're drawing right now? Is it a guitar or a
It's my
ukulele?
ukulele.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. I brought my ukulele from SF, and it's been like a huge, huge, like amazing partner here in Taiwan. Because whenever I get like tired of drawing, because like art used to be my hobby, and then like now it's become work. So I've taken up like ukulele playing as like a hobby now. It's been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of segues into a question that I was asking you before the stream, which is when you're drawing, you know, it's such a personal topic that you're drawing. You're literally like sharing your memories and, you know, drawing from your past self. So I was curious, how do you balance that with the business aspect of the fact that you're like selling up, you're ultimately creating a product that other people will buy. So do you ever have like a voice in your head that's like, you know, I should do this so that my story is more relatable or something? Or are you able to like
Yeah,
compartmentalize it and see it differently?
that is an amazing question. I think this happens a lot with like creatives who, you know, have stories that are also like kind of like on the marginalized end or like are on the side that's not mainstream. Um, like I thought about that a lot earlier on in my storytelling or like creating the book where um I remember even when I was like first making the pitch for this book to sell to editors, originally I didn't even have a lot of like the queer part of myself in it. I only had the Asian part because like for some reason my brain was thinking like, oh, if you include two marginalizations, that's like way too much, you know, like mainstream straight white audiences are like not going to read that. But then my
Mm-hmm.
like agent was like, no, like this is like totally a part of you, and like can you truly write like a memoir without including that like giant part of your life? And she was totally right, and you know, just kind of like really in over my head at the time. And I'm so glad that she, you know, encouraged me to bring my full self out. Because that was like one of the main parts too that like a lot of the publishers wanted to highlight. And I think the cool part now too is that like a lot of these marginalized stories are becoming more mainstream. But like that was something I had to like think about earlier on. And now like I'm really glad that my book was my full like unfiltered self. I think other things I thought about was like, I mean, audience, you definitely keep that in mind, where I knew that I wanted to write to more of like a YA young adult audience, because well, I saw the audience as like younger, you know, middle school to high school Laura, who's like at the peak of her confusion about exactly what she is. And I know there's so many like people out there like that. So I had to keep in mind like the references I used, or like you know, pop culture references and like,
Right.
content, if it would resonate with like someone who's 14 or 15 at the time. So I called a lot of like my brother's friends. My brother is like 5 years younger, and so I was like, oh hey, like do
The
people
youths.
like kids your age, like yeah, like am I dating myself, or like if I say this, and then he would like give me the real deal lowdown.
Yeah. Love it. If you could say something to your past self, the past self that is depicted in the book that you've written, what do you think you would tell your past self from like maybe 5 years ago, when you were still at Penn?
That's a great question. I would tell myself, one, to not take myself too seriously, and then
Mm.
um, I would just like question everything. I feel like growing up there's so much that like you're supposed to take just for just like take the word of, just stuff about like, oh, like, you must like guys, or like stuff like, oh, you have to do your X, Y, and Z. When it's like, no, there's like nothing that you actually like have to do.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Those are good.
Yeah. What would you tell your past self?
And I'll throw it back to the chat, and I'll ask if you watching this could tell yourself something, to your 5 years ago version of yourself. What would you tell yourself? So let's see. I'm 29 right now, so I would be talking to my 24-year-old self who had quit her job a couple years earlier, and I was just at the beginning of my freelance art career. I was still like working from home. I didn't have like a studio yet. I wasn't really doing, like, I was working on illustration work that is not very similar to what I'm doing now. Like now I would say my work has more of my personal like artistry in it and myself in it. And before it was more like design illustration design for like tech companies. I would tell myself to go for it, to try and go for it. And I feel like at that age, and to a certain extent now for sure still, but when I was younger, I really cared about what other people thought of me. Like I really, really did care a lot. I was very self-conscious. And so a lot of the career decisions I would make would be unconsciously guided by that bias of wanting to have a good answer. For example, if somebody asked me like what I was up to and what my job was, so I would, take on projects that I thought just like sounded good, as opposed to like more intentionally picking a direction for myself. So I would tell myself to trust myself, trust my instincts, and it will probably work out like way better than I think. So just go for it. And yeah, I would tell myself that life is really short, and life is very precious and amazing, and the bad things that I experience are usually temporary. So yeah, keep that in mind. I was very angsty at that age. Still am to an extent, but
still am. Yeah.
Yeah. I was very angsty. I was also like, I'm not sure if you experienced this when you quit your job, but I went from a really intense tech job where like I literally never saw the sun. Like I would, I only saw the sun on the drive to work, and then like by the time I'd like get out of work, like the sun would be down. I never saw the sun, outside at least. Like I never stood under the sun directly. Like that's the kind of job that I had, which I appreciate. The awesome things that job gave me too. But when I quit, and then suddenly I was able to like design my own life and my career, I was also a little bit like confused. And it had me like questioning why I was so intense about work and why we are intense about work. So I was like also really very confuzzled about like capitalism and like the role that it plays in my life, especially in a really intense place like SF.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Like I also like, now I think a lot about like, oh, like why was I working so hard and like to do X, Y, and Z, to like, release the button or whatever. And
yeah. The things that I was going to say, the things that I stressed out about at my old job, like, especially if you work in tech, like a lot of your work is very ephemeral, and that's just part of it. Like a lot of illustrations and websites I've worked on, live on the internet for like 3 or 4 years, which I think like is why writing a book is a really cool thing, because, your book is like a permanent object. But when I think about the things that I would stress out about at my previous job, like a lot of those things like don't exist anymore. Like a lot of those products got wound down, or they're so different now. They've evolved such that like it's only traces of the previous DNA that you can find. But it's not really the same product. So I'm kind of like, I don't know why I like stressed out so much about this. Like, I don't really think it's like that big of a deal now, like looking back at it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think like now that I do choose my own schedule, I realize how much more I have to be deliberate about how I spend my day. Even stuff like, do I decide to draw today or not? And like just how do I want to spend my time versus before when I was working, it was just like everything felt like it was automatic. Where it's like, oh yeah, like of course my day will just be full of meetings, and of course, I have to like write this document, and of course I have to send all these emails, and next thing you know is like 8 p.m. You're like, okay, I guess next thing is I'll eat, I'll shower, I'll work out, and I'll go to bed, and like rinse and repeat. And there's so much that I wasn't thinking about like why I was doing something, or like maybe why I wasn't feeling happy with something. And then now so much time to just like think, like just constantly check in myself on a daily basis of like, all right, am I still happy doing what I'm doing? How do I feel? Do I feel burnt out? Do I feel inspired? And like, and just like being very intentional with what I do.
Yeah. I mean, relatedly, I'm curious for you, for your current project as for your graphic novel, how do you like evaluate success for yourself when it comes to your project? Or do you have goals that you want to accomplish with this book? Like what to you would be like like something that you would, what would be like, I guess, what are your like goals with this project, if any, other than like to write a book? And that itself could be, I think, the only goal as well. I'm not trying to say you should have goals, basically, but like if you do have goals or like parameters of success, like what are they? How are you thinking about that?
That is a good question. I think for myself, like my editor probably definitely has goals for like the business success of this book. But for myself, I originally like thought, and I still do, like my number one goal is still to just influence and like help at least like one younger Laura like myself.
That's a great goal. Like
better understand their life and like feel heard. I think a lot of times when I get bogged down with stuff like, oh, like, will this book be successful? What will people think of my book? Or like, will people like now know everything that's like in my deepest secrets? But then like I had to like get myself out of my head and like, oh, these are all very individualist goals. But at the end of the day, like the reason I wrote this was because I wanted to like help others who were queer or like were Asian trying to find themselves. So yeah, I hope like I just get a comment from someone once this book comes out saying like how much it impacted them, and that will like all make this like year and a half of like blood, sweat, and tears completely worth it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. I've pre-ordered your book, so I'll let you know my thoughts, but I'm sure it'll be from the amount that I've seen of it so far. I'm sure that I'll really enjoy it. I really like reading graphic novels. I feel like it's a different way of reading that makes my brain happy.
Do you have any?
Axel Gerber. Axel Gerber in the chat says that shooting yourself is killer, at least for me. And I totally agree. That is true. Favorite graphic novels. I recently read this graphic novel called Pilu of the Woods. It's by I forgot her last name. I know her social media handle. It's Oh My Pie. And it's a great book. It's like an illustrated graphic novel, and I really like graphic novels that are colored. I know that takes a lot more work from the artist, but I feel like my brain is like so much more engaged when there's color involved. It feels like such a visual snack, so I really like that one. How about yourself?
Some of my favorites are I think we were talking about this before the chat. But one of the books that like really heavily inspired me is a book called Spinning by Tilly Walden. And she is also like a queer comic artist from Texas. And her book Spinning is like her own memoir about her life. Not only like her relationship with figure skating and like how it's a very gendered sport, but also her own like coming out and coming of age story. And that like book was probably like the first, I think that was the first queer graphic novel I've ever read. And like that made a huge influence on me to like decide to write my own queer stories.
I see.
And like the art was absolutely phenomenal too. Like it was in limited color, but she, the way that she uses negative space is like, I've never seen anything like it. So highly recommend it.
Yeah, that's one thing I really love about the graphic novel format is the way that people can play with compositions. And I want to propose the same question back to the chat, which is, if you're watching this and you have a favorite graphic novel, please feel free to share it in the chat, because I think both me and Laura are pretty big graphic novel readers and fans over here. So it'd be fun to hear what people are reading. I really enjoyed. Axel Gerber wants to know, I missed the name. The name, the artist name is Tilly W. I forgot her last name. It's called Walden. Spinning. Tilly Walden, and the book is called Spinning. And then it's like, the cover's like a bunch of ice skaters, and then there's like the main character is like spinning. That's what I remember from the book cover.
What colors are you using?
I'm using colors that I kind of default to a lot. It's like this robin blue and like pink and really saturated green. So you're probably really focused on your book launch, but you also mentioned that you're working on a second book. Are you allowed to like share what that project is about and how that also came to be?
My second book that I'm currently writing, it's going to be with the same publisher, HarperCollins, and this one will be vaguely a queer woman love story with hopefully a happy ending, because we need more of those in media. And I haven't like started writing down like the full premise, but I want it to be similar to, I wrote a series of comics earlier a couple of years back called To All the Girls I Loved Before, and it's talking about like my own coming out journey. It's like play off of the To All the Boys I Loved Before. And I talk about like each crush I had growing up, even before I knew I was queer, and how that was like a big instrumental journey in my own coming out. So I want this story to be similar to where like it follows a progression of either like different girls that I've been with and or different stages of my life in which I'm overcoming not only my identity, but my like emotional like relationship with myself.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I mean, before the stream, I was remarking to you about how I think it's really cool, the progression that you've made in just your own journey from, being in like high school and college, like you were explaining in your book, and coming to like realize and embrace and explore your queerness. And then to now where you're an artist, like who's creating queer work and like stories with queer themes in it that like other maybe young people who like young Laura's can read, I think that's really cool. It's a really cool, it's really cool full circle.
Thank you. Yeah, honestly, just like so blessed to be able to do that. It just like feel really cool and full circle, because like growing up, I definitely didn't have any of that representation, and like I feel like it would have made life so much easier if I had just like at least like one book like Spinning, which I read probably like in late college. If I had like one of those in middle school, that would have just been so amazing.
Yeah. I feel like if I had a stronger Asian or Chinese American art role model, like a contemporary role model, I think I would have probably been more interested in art at a young age, and I would have probably started drawing a little bit earlier. Analu O says that a serious polyp is a great color play because it manages to convey everything the story demands with a limited palette, by David Mazzucchelli. Cool. Thank you for sharing that. So a question about like publishing is, when you got your first book deal, did they sign you to this book as well? Or is that something that you got like as you were writing this first book?
Yes, it was 2 in 1. So as I was like selling my first book, editors would ask me like what else I was working on. And I had mentioned that like, you know, I've been working on that To All the Girls I Loved Before comic and would love to tell a queer story. And then so almost every offer I got was like a 2-book deal.
Cool, that's awesome. When your stories are so personal and so vulnerable, like they're about your identity, what is your process for handling rejection? Because it's like you're kind of, you don't want it to feel like your story is being rejected, but it is like closer to that than if you're selling like a web product and a VC rejected you or something.
VC rejected. Oh, that is such a great question. Well,
like maybe another example could be like you're pitching a memoir about your like very personal life story to a publisher, and then they're like, nah, you know, we're gonna pass on that. Or it could be something simpler as like you wrote about a very pivotal moment, like maybe an experience where you were coming out, and you wrote it in a comic format, and then you posted it on like Instagram or Twitter, and it got like 2 likes, you know, like like how does that how do you like process that? Are you able to like compartmentalize it? Or because it's not the same as like writing a joke and then it gets like 2 likes. It's like whatever,
right.
It's like, this is my story, like, yeah.
That's fair. Yeah, I think I have gotten like pretty good at compartmentalizing that now, where like I post so much, and honestly, on average, I think my art probably only gets like 10, 20 likes anyways. And so I like now at this point, I'm like, oh, okay, it's chill, you know. But
it's chill.
For personal stuff, yeah. For personal stuff, it definitely like stung a lot in the beginning, especially like it's like, oh, I'm putting my full vulnerable self out there, and it may feel like it's like a personal attack when someone doesn't accept it. But I think now, like I've also understood that a lot of times, like, you know, it might just not be like someone's cup of tea, or like for now, I think as long as I remember there's like at least one person that like really related, then that's kind of all that matters for me. And like I take pride in being able to just like even share it in the first place. I think to get myself in a mindset where I'm already like taking pride and like taking that leap to put it out there is like good enough for me at this point. But yeah, it can definitely be very unnerving, like putting that story out.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Thanks for your candid thoughts. You know, we're coming up to nearly the end of the stream. We've got about 5 minutes left. So I just want to say thanks to everyone for joining us with Doodle Therapy with Laura this week. I do also want to plug Laura's social media. You can check her out and follow her at Hey Laura Gao on Twitter and Instagram. And she's also put up pre-orders for her upcoming book, her debut graphic novel, Messy Roots, which you check out at lauragao.com/messyroots. it's actually very convenient because you can order it on Amazon. So I was able to do so on my phone without having to find my credit card. So yay, technology. And to recap, if you joined us into the stream, after we did the intro, we are drawing some memories because Laura, is a graphic novelist, and her debut novel is like an autobiographical memoir. So why not explore serializing some of our memories into a sequential comics format. So I have a template in the description that you can use to draw your memories in, or you can, use your own format like Laura is. And if you do end up creating a drawing, whether it's a simple sketch or a full piece, feel free to share it on social media. You can tag me @by Alice Lee on Instagram, Twitter, Behance, and also you can mention Laura at Hey Laura Gao. It's always fun to see everyone's doodles, and this community is very talented. Axel says, so happy I fell into your Messy Roots existence on Behance. Yay!
Aw, thank you, Axel.
And Axel says, check out Hothead Patian. It was his first queer graphic novel. Yay! I also want to kind of quickly give a little preview to a fun project that's been in the works. So I've mentioned this on previous streams multiple times. So basically, at the end of the year in 2020, I had a special guest, Lauren Hom, on our stream. She's a typographer and letterer, and I lettered this phrase, making art, breaking hearts, on stream. And then from that, another guest who had been on before, Amy Webelow, and I decided to team up and turn that artwork that was created into a embroidered jacket. And this has been now basically about 6 months in the works because we're trying to source all of our materials really responsibly, ethically. We're working with basically all women teams, local teams, to create this product. So I just got it back earlier today. So I'm just going to flash it really quick on the stream. So it's a bomber jacket. It's a satin bomber jacket. And on the back, it says, making art, breaking hearts. And then there's lots of embroidery along the sides. I've got a little palette here. There's a tiger on the front, and then my name. And we're going to do a photo shoot before we do a small pre-order. But I'm really excited because this was a very doodle therapy centric project. It started off as a piece of artwork created on one guest stream. And the phrase was actually created by Lauren Hom. So props to Lauren. And then with another doodle therapy guest, turned it into an actual product. And I've kind of been teasing it in little bits, throughout. I think I showed a little embroidery sample a couple of streams ago. So yeah, really excited about that. It's been in the works for quite some time.
I want to order one right now. Oh my God.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's so fun to make physical products after a long time of working in tech.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, we're reaching the last couple minutes of our stream. So would you mind zooming out and sharing how far you got with your project?
Yeah. Let's see this here. So
cool.
I just go with a nice kind of pastel-y color theme, similar to what we went today with our outfits.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up finishing my 3 memories in Polaroids. I'll probably write down the memory on the Polaroid later. And then I put a couple of transposed objects that were part of my Taiwan experience. So the 3 I have is a mahjong piece in which I play mahjong a lot with my old Taiwanese roommates. So that was a lot of fun. And then a poker card, because we played a lot of this game called Fight the Landlord too, which is a very classic Chinese game. And I played it a lot growing up with my grandparents. So it's really awesome to play it with my Taiwanese roommates. And then the last one's my ukulele, which I mentioned earlier, was like a amazing just like partner here, especially during quarantine where I had nothing to do, and I was just like jamming out in my hotel for 2 weeks.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I love it. And if you end up, finishing it, maybe people can just follow you on, in Twitter and Instagram, and then, they will see the finals. So
yeah. Happy to post it. Love
Thanks
to see
for all
what
the
other people do.
Yeah, love to see what you guys all make. Thank you for the super kind words about the jacket. Yes, I'll be posting the full project on Behance, etc. after we do our photo shoot. And we'll be back on again in 2 weeks with editorial illustrator Daniel Fishel. So really exciting. Thanks everyone for joining us. And I hope you all have a great rest of the day. And thank you so much to Laura for joining us all the way from Taipei, Taiwan. We'll see you all later. Hi, bye.
See ya.